Hello all and welcome to The Big Story, where we discuss the hottest topics of the day right in the heart of the newsroom. I'm Haryanto, coming to you live from the Straits Times. Now we are streaming on Facebook and on YouTube, so be sure to comment, like and share our video. While you are at it, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell button to be alerted of our videos. I'll have my newsroom colleagues to join me to talk about the stories that got you talking today. Now on to our first segment. Now under mounting pressure to respond following weeks of protests, Chief Executive Carrie Lam today stressed that the highly controversial Extradition Bill is dead. But protesters immediately dismissed her comments, threatening more mass rallies. Mrs. Lam appealed to the public to give her administration the opportunity and time to take Hong Kong out of the current impasse and try to improve the current situation. Her use of the word dead to describe the bill did not impress Civil Human Rights Front's Bonnie Leong. Now to tell us more, I have regional correspondent Elizabeth Law. Welcome, Liz.
Hi.
This is your first time?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so Liz, tell us, what does Extradition Bill is dead? What does that mean? What does it entail?
Well, the thing is that, so she is saying by all intents and purposes, for all intents and purposes, actually it is dead because she says she's not going to reintroduce it in LegCo, which is the Parliament of Hong Kong. She's also saying that there will be no work that will be done. Yeah. All work on it has stopped. So it's just going to be allowed to die a natural death. The term that she used today is 壽終正寢. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, which actually is used to refer to an old person dying quite peacefully at home, which is basically what's happening to the bill. But of course, people are worried, like what Bonnie said, as we saw from today's report, is that there is a chance that because as long as she does not completely withdraw the bill, it means that there is a chance that they can always reintroduce it, because whenever a bill has been suspended, and in this case it's been suspended indefinitely, all according to LegCo rules, they only need to wait for 12 days before this can be reintroduced and brought back on the table. So that is the thing they are worried about, and what they've asked for is 撤回, which is to complete withdrawal. But obviously she has not used that word again, and I think we've seen from reports that a lot of opposition characters are accusing her of wordplay, and a lot of protesters, in fact, are accusing her of just using wordplay to skirt around the issue.
And Liz, let's take us back to a few weeks, and in fact up till quite recently, you were in the thick of things in Hong Kong, right? When the protests happened. How was the situation like? Describe to us, what you saw, the sentiment on the ground. Talk about safety, how was it? Yeah, we've seen pictures and videos of it.
Yeah, of course, and of course, a very special shout out to the Hong Kong correspondent Claire Huang as well, who has really been the one who has been working non-stop throughout all of this. But basically, by the time I got in, it was in time for the protest on June 16, which obviously started out as a very peaceful protest. This is just barely days after the very dramatic scenes where police had fired pepper spray, rubber bullets, tear gas to disperse the protesters who had tried to surround the Legislative Council to prevent the bill from being discussed. Anyway, so on June 16, it was just massive amounts of people. You cannot even imagine it. And imagine the CTE, an 8-lane road, completely filled with people. Just all dressed in black. It's just a sea of people, and that was just that. But at the same time, when you have so many people, it was still very peaceful. It was a very relaxed atmosphere. You had entire families, people with their toddlers, someone pushing a pram. You've got old people with like walking stick, just trying to just join in the process to do their part for Hong Kong. So that was that Sunday. It seemed really nice. People stayed out late, yes. They still occupied large swaths of the road for long hours, but still it was very peaceful. But then as time went on, they felt that the government wasn't listening to them, and that's when things started to get a bit more hairy. And when they surrounded police headquarters, we were there watching it, and that because these were much younger people who were in a way a lot more energetic. It is the school holidays now, so they really don't have to go to school. And they do have time to arrange all of this. And I think the sense that you got was that these were very young people who cared deeply about their future, but they felt that there was no such thing left for them in Hong Kong anymore, or they were worried that there will be no future left, because in Hong Kong you have these great amounts of freedom that really you don't see in any other part of China.
Yeah.
So they were fighting for that, and you could feel the tensions were rising. We were stood on a bridge overlooking the police headquarters. We have all seen images of that, and because it was so hot, you could just sense the tension. The air was very thick, and people were throwing eggs and all that. And you know, we were slightly worried, like, what if the police came storming out of their headquarters? It would really be quite a dangerous situation.
And Liz, you know, we talked about this earlier on. I told you that I went to Hong Kong end of last year, and you know, I enjoyed myself there. The place was really good. But now, you know, after seeing all this, and I am assured that, you know, that you mentioned, even though there was a protest and there was a lot of people, it was peaceful. But really the question is then, you know, is it still safe for tourists to go over?
Well, certainly, of course. I mean, there should never be a doubt that Hong Kong will ever not be safe for tourists or for anyone, because protests are largely peaceful. Yes, we've seen these very dramatic scenes, but you have to bear in mind that that all these happen within the administrative heart, in places like Admiralty and Tama, which is a bit further out from where the hotels are as well, or around the police headquarters. And these are areas that largely tourists don't quite venture to, except last Sunday when they were in Tsim Sha Tsui and Mong Kok. But the whole point of them being there was really to try and engage the mainland tourists who like to congregate around those areas.
So my Hong Kong Disneyland and my Ocean Park are still safe, yeah?
I mean, if you were to compare, I mean, of course it will be safe. It will really do no one any good if Hong Kong were to come down really hard on tourists. And as well, and I told you this, I mean, the distance between where these protests are and your Disneyland is literally from Braddell to Tuas. A long way away.
So Liz, okay, jokes aside, really, so what now? You know, what's in store for Carrie Lam's administration?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy question to answer, because there are things that need to happen. I think the key word here is rebuild. The key phrase here is to rebuild trust. Trust has been lost between the people and the administration. Trust has been lost between the people and the police. So for them to have to rebuild trust, I'm not a politician. I can't come up with policies on what you have to do, but that is something that has to be restored. And if your people can't even trust your law enforcement officers, and if you look at some of the memes that are coming out now, it really is a very dangerous situation. So she has a lot of work. I mean, her work is really cut out for her. And we'll see. She's asked for more time. I'm not sure if the people are willing to give her more time, but at the same time, they can't quite get rid of her. So we
just have to see how it goes.
Well, as we all say, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, thank you so much, Liz, you know, for coming onto the show to tell us more about the situation in Hong Kong. And clearly, you know, again, Mrs. Lam just came out today to say that the Extradition Bill is dead. So the days to come, you know, we don't know what's going to happen, but you know, just keep yourself updated with the news on our website at www.straitstimes.com. Once again, thank you so much, Liz, for coming onto the show. Now, our second segment is one that is close to every Singaporean's heart. Just 3 letters, CPF. Now, a recent study which had found that those in Singapore aged 65 and up would need at least $1,375 a month to achieve a basic standard of living is useful for personal goal setting and retirement planning. However, the methodology used by its researchers is fundamentally different from the government's method of arriving at payout sums under the Central Provident Fund, or CPF, said MOM. Now, that said, is there a benchmark to how much one should ideally have for a comfortable retirement? Is it easy to come to a standard benchmark of retirement adequacy? What can one do to prepare for retirement? Now, to tell us more, I have Yuan Sin with me right here. Welcome, Yuan Sin.
Hello, hi.
Yuan-Shin, of course, you are a familiar face right here for TBS. Now, Yuan-Shin, first of all, let's talk about the genesis of this whole issue. Now, why did the discussion on retirement adequacy surface?
Yeah, so this whole conversation started with the release of a study by a team of Singaporean researchers. They have a lot of experience in social policy. So this study was released in May, and it used an established method known as the minimum income standards to establish how much an elderly person aged 65 and above will need for retirement. Not just retirement, but just, you know, from 65 onwards, how much you need to have a basic standard of living. And their definition of, you know, this basic standard of living goes beyond just merely survival. So it's not enough to just, you know, have housing, have food. I mean, that is just, you know, merely survival. But, you know, are you feeling fulfilled? Do you have a sense of dignity in your old age? So these are all questions that I think they tried to tackle. And how they did this was that they kind of rounded up a very diverse group of over 100 participants who are all elderly people and across income spectrums. So they came together in focus groups to talk about what they think they needed in their own old age. So I think this whole process is a very collaborative process, and they made sure that there was consensus among all the participants. So everyone had to agree. If there was one person who said, oh no, you know, I don't think we need, for instance, a standing fan in the room or like air conditioning, then it would have to go to another round where they then deliberate. So they came to a conclusion that you need $1,379 for a month, and this factored housing. But assume that one is in good health, so it doesn't look at healthcare costs. It also factors in you know, money that you need for social activities. So you know, to meet up with friends at a restaurant, right? Because you know, I mean, you can say that you don't need to spend that money. It's extravagant. But can you imagine just sitting around in your home watching TV?
And this standard is also used in other countries.
So I think Japan, Ireland. So and I think it started in the UK as well.
So has there ever been, you know, a similar benchmark for retirement in Singapore? If there is, why? Or if there isn't, why not?
Yeah. So I think so far there has not been, you know, a flat figure like this that has been released, which is precisely why it sparked such, you know, the debate, right? Like, is 1379 enough or not? So I think the government has kind of traditionally shied away from having an easy to understand figure. And I think that for the average Singaporean like you and me, right, having a, you know, a clear figure like that.
It makes it easier and it makes it real, right, for us to understand
a certain calculate our savings, we can kind of project things into the future. So I suspect that it could be politically difficult for the government to commit to a figure. So on one hand, right, if you say that, okay, we all need 1379 to survive
and be comfortable and all that,
people may say, okay, so what about all those people who fall below this? You know, what are we doing about them? Secondly, there could be groups who also say that, okay, you will say that this is enough, but what if they, you know,
feel that, you know, they want more,
or like, you know, they age and they find out that it's not enough, so they could point fingers at the government, so it could be difficult for them to commit to this figure. But what we have in Singapore is definitely that we have many different schemes beside the CPF to ensure that everyone has enough for retirement adequacy according to the government. But of course, like on the ground, you know, sentiments differ lah. So maybe this is where you know, this debate is going right now.
So is there a midpoint then, you know, a balance where the differences can be reconciled? Like you mentioned, you know, on one hand, some people would want this, on the other hand, you know, the government hasn't quite come out with it. So is there a midpoint?
I mean, there's been a bit of discussion back and forth, and I think, I mean, why we are talking about this now is because the government has recently responded to the results of this study, right? I think both sides kind of talk over each other. They have different philosophical standpoints on this. So I can't say which one is right. So from the point of view of the researchers, they employ a qualitative method, which is also rigorous. And I think what they're trying to do is to, you know, be more aspirational. So instead of just looking at what we have now, they're asking, can we have more, or can we think of a way in which we can ensure that those who are vulnerable in society may be able to have access to more forms of social participation? I think whereas the government takes a more pragmatic approach. So the way they calculate the CPF sums, they look at the household expenditure survey. So they prefer to look at it more quantitatively, and they look at spending patterns from the past. And then from then they determine what is enough, and they would say that, okay, you know, if you, I mean, and they expect people to be self-reliant. So they expect majority of people to work and save money in their CPF, and if that is not enough, then there would be government schemes to step in
help
and
them,
help
right?
you.
So, you know, with that, Yuan Sin, where do we go from here, right? You know, what can we do to prepare adequately for retirement then?
I mean, I guess now that at least there has been this number that has been issued, maybe it's a good time for everyone to take stock and talk to, you know, their parents, family, and think about what they need for themselves in the future, right? So, and I think more can be done to enhance the financial literacy of Singaporeans, because even the CPF system is very difficult to understand, even for the well-educated, right? So I think there needs to be a bit more engagement on that front, and also maybe to kind of like improve the understanding of retirement adequacy in Singapore. The government may, you know, it may help all of us if the government does release a bit more data. So, because we know about CPF, but not everyone is on CPF.
Correct.
So if you can have data that looks at all income sources, so let's say your salary, social support, investment income, and money that you get from friends and family, and then you can see across the whole population how many people still do not have enough to meet their needs in retirement, then that may help to kind of like move the conversation forward a little bit.
Right. So definitely financial literacy is very important, so that people kind of understand, you know, what are the schemes involved and what is this whole CPF is all about. Of course, we have a basic understanding of it, but really to go down to the nitty-gritty details of it, I think that is where, you know, some kind of awareness or education would help.
And it will address some of the anxieties that we have, because when you are unsure, you will definitely worry for the future.
Exactly. Once again, thank you, Yuan Sin, for coming on to the show to talk about this. Again, for those of you who are watching us at home or wherever you are, if you want to read more on CPF related stories, do head on to our website at www.straitstimes.com. Now on to our third segment, another three-letter acronym that continues to make headlines recently, PMD. Now, what now, you may ask? The Straits Times was on a stakeout at 4 locations over 3 days to see how many PMD users broke the speed limits stipulated at these areas. And what did we find out? Now, every rider on a PMD broke the speed limit on the footpath. Every single one. Now, here's a clip of the stakeout. Now there you go. For the full video, do head on to our website at www.straitstimes.com. Now to tell us more about this stakeout, I have senior correspondent Tan Eileen. Welcome, Eileen. Now Eileen, I understand that you are involved in the stakeout. So tell us, you know, how did you and the team conduct the stakeout?
Yeah, so as you learned from the video, we staked out at 4 spots, right? In Singapore, Gardens by the Bay East, a stretch of River Valley, a stretch of Cross Street, and we were also at Pasir Ris Drive 3. And so with a speed measuring device, we were able to nail down the speeds at which, you know, some PMD riders whom we encountered, what the speeds they were traveling at, also e-bike riders. And what we also did was, one of us would be standing a distance away, where we could flag down some of these riders. Those who chose to stop, we spoke with them.
Right. And those who broke the speed limit, rather, Eileen, what were the reasons that they gave?
Most of them said, you know, they they didn't break the speed limit. Some of them said they don't know what the speed limit is.
Yeah.
You know, some gave funny reasons, like you know, they were traveling because they were on a slight downhill, and that they weren't throttling, so they were just being pulled along by gravity, you know. So they didn't break any rules.
And of course, you know, when the story came out, you mentioned earlier on as well, as we were chatting, people started writing to you. So what was the response, you know, that you received from readers upon reading your report?
Yes, I think for this story, I think it's so close to people's hearts. Many people wrote to us, you know, and on Facebook we had responses. There were, you know, probably over 1,000 written responses. We had dozens of, we received dozens of emails, you know, me and my colleagues, and people also wrote in to our forum page, and these letters were published. I think people are clearly very upset with this policy. You know, this policy probably works very well for PMD riders, owners of these motorized vehicles. Probably it works very well for the government because, you know, with one policy, you know, for years Singaporeans have complained about how cars are very expensive. So with this one policy, suddenly lots of people can now afford some sort of mobility and the kind of freedom, you know, that that comes along with it. So it all works very well with them. But, you know, many people have written in to us talking about how, you know, it's no longer safe for them to walk on our pavements. People are very worried when their elderly parents go out to walk by themselves. You know, we are a society, we encourage walking, you know, people should take brisk walks, should keep healthy and so on, but now our streets are no longer safe. Our pavements and our shared paths, you know, lots of readers have written to us also talking about how they've been injured by PMD riders who have just smashed into them, you know, and many have also written to us about how they've encountered near misses. You know, a lot are very, very worried for especially for their parents.
And you know, why have a policy then that clearly endangers pedestrians like that?
We don't know. You know, I think, you know, I think the sort of feedback that we've gotten really isn't so earth-shatteringly new. You know, we've got so much media coverage really about the injuries that people have sustained. Some very severe, you know, head and neck injuries. You know, yet I'm not quite sure why the government is not listening. Don't forget that whilst, you know, a small portion of our population is enjoying this policy, with huge numbers, and these are voters, who are not pleased at all with this policy.
Right, definitely. And of course, you know, you mentioned about the impact, right, of this on the pedestrians. A bit more, of course. What about, say, you know, the power assisted vehicles? They are a boon, right, to people and all that. And should they return to the roads, you reckon?
Now the thing is, we've spoken, I think for this story, I think what was also interesting about it is we've spoken to physicists, we've spoken to engineers who have shown us, you know, using science, you know, what the impact is like if you are smashed into by a PMD that's traveling at 25 kilometers per hour. You know, it's equivalent to being hit by a 10 kg sack of rice from the 7th story. You know, this is no small matter. You know, and people have become, you know, we've seen stories. We've had stories of people who have become very severely brain damaged, you know, and unlikely to fully recover ever. You know, I mean, some of our politicians have talked about, you know, how, you know, maybe PMD riders can take up third-party insurance. Really, that is no consolation and people cannot see this as a viable option. Nobody wants to get injured. You know, people who are out walking on our pavements, we don't want to get injured. You know, and as taxpayers, readers are saying, as taxpayers, we demand for an environment that is reasonably safe. You know. You know, and some people are talking about how if we can ban chewing gum, which is really causing no harm to anyone, why not ban this thing?
The PMD as well,
you know?
right.
And, you know, also there are views also from readers saying, why not just move them back to the roads where they belong? Because these are vehicles. When you talk about, you know, the definition of a vehicle is that it should transport humans or goods, then it is a vehicle. Then let's return them to the roads, because by moving them to the pavement, what it means is they are endangering humans who are not encased in metal, you know. So should pedestrians be forced to bear the risk of a PMD use.
Right. Thank you so much, Eileen, for coming onto the show to tell us more about the stakeout that you and the team conducted. Now, for those of you who are watching, of course, if you want to know more and the full report of the stakeout, do head over to our website at www.straitstimes.com. Once again, thank you, Eileen, for coming onto the show. Now, earlier on, of course, we talked about Carrie Lam's announcement regarding the extradition bill that is dead, and really, what is the reaction to this announcement. And then we moved on to talk to Yuan Sin about the CPF payout sums, and really what one can do to prepare for retirement, or to adequately prepare for retirement. And just earlier on, we had Eileen to tell us more about the stakeout that Straits Times did to see how errant PMD users are on the pavements that is also shared with pedestrians. So those were our top stories for the day. Now, for more news and videos, do log on to our website at www.straitstimes.com. Once again, I'm Haryanto. Join us tomorrow, same time, for more stories on The Big Story.